Have you ever given everything you had to something, loyalty, time, heart, only to be discarded like a replaceable part the moment you stopped fitting someone else's vision? She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. We don't need your military mindset slowing us down, she said, eyes on her phone, not even looking at me. It wasn't a conversation, it was a statement. And just like that, 18 years of service, both to my country and to this company, ended in a 3-minute meeting and a signature on a generic HR form. My name is Raymond Delgado. Most people call me Ray. I'm 57 years old, a retired Army logistics officer, and until last Tuesday, I was the head of security and operations at Beck Defense Systems, a company I helped stabilize, scale, and secure for nearly 2 decades. I wasn't flashy, I wasn't political. I just got the job done. They thought they could fire me quietly, that I would go away quietly. What they didn't know was that my silence isn't weakness. It's training. And there's one clause in my contract that's about to make a lot of noise. They thought it was over. It was just beginning. I didn't plan to end up in corporate America. Truth be told, after 22 years in the Army, most of them spent coordinating logistics under fire. I thought I'd settle into something quiet. Maybe teach, maybe consult. But life rarely follows the plans we sketch in our heads. When I met Richard Beck at a veterans hiring forum in Northern Virginia, he wasn't looking for a flashy resume or polished charm. He was looking for grit, for steadiness, for someone who knew how to lead without raising their voice, someone who knew how to think when others panicked, someone who had been tested in places where failure cost lives. That, he said, was what he needed to grow a company built on trust and national responsibility. Beck Defense Systems at that time was a lean but ambitious defense contractor focused on logistics software and supply chain security for the military. Richard offered me a role as Director of Operations and Security. I took it knowing little about the civilian defense world, but I brought everything I'd learned from the Army: adaptability, discipline, an obsession with details, and the belief that leadership is a service, not a title. My family moved to Richmond. My wife, Elena, had that rare combination of kindness and steel. She held everything together through my deployments and transitions, raised our 2 daughters with humor and strength, and supported every step I took into civilian life. Angela, our oldest, went into medicine. Lisa followed me into uniform, naval, intelligence. We were proud of them both. When Elena got sick, it was sudden and merciless. Ovarian cancer doesn't ask questions. She was gone in under a year. I buried her with full military honors, then returned to work quietly, because that's what she would have done. But I never forgot the last thing she told me during one of her good days. Ray, document everything. Even trust deserves backup. I took that advice to heart. I kept records. I updated systems. I developed a continuity plan no one ever asked for, but everyone relied on when things went sideways. I wasn't the loudest person in the room. But when a system failed or a shipment got compromised or a security audit popped up unexpectedly, mine was the first name they called. I built a team I trusted, many of them veterans like me, because I believed in second chances and competence over credentials. I didn't care if someone wore medals or had MBA letters stitched into their business card. I cared if they showed up on time, solved problems, and owned their mistakes. Over 16 years, I helped take Beck Defense from a small regional firm to a national player with 7-figure contracts and federal clearance. When a ransomware attack hit a supplier in 2015, we avoided catastrophe because of a system I designed. When the pandemic disrupted our manufacturing partners, I was the one who rerouted shipments and ensured our essential staff could work safely. I never asked for applause. I considered that just doing my job. Richard Beck trusted me. He called me his quiet general. He gave me full autonomy over operational planning and risk assessment. But when his health started to fail, I saw the shift begin. His daughter, Savannah, began showing up in meetings with her crisp suits and sharp tongue. She talked in terms of disruption and lean innovation, buzzwords with little substance. She saw every process as too slow, every senior leader as dead weight. I kept my head down. I adapted. but I could feel the ground moving. I just didn't realize how quickly the quake would hit, or how ready I was for what came next. The morning it happened, the building felt colder than usual, as if it already knew what was coming. I arrived at 7:15 sharp, like I had every weekday, for the past 16 years. The security team nodded as I passed through the main doors, and I returned the gesture with a quiet smile. They didn't know yet. None of them did. There was nothing unusual about my calendar that day, except for a 9:30 meeting titled Leadership Alignment, Savannah Beck. I'd received the invite 2 days earlier. No context, no materials, just her name and mine. At 9:28, I walked into the executive conference room. Savannah was already there, seated at the head of the table, legs crossed, phone in hand. She didn't look up. Behind her stood Colin Bates from HR, and beside him, a young man I'd never seen before. Probably legal. The setup was clear. This wasn't a discussion, it was a delivery. She finally looked at me, expressionless. "Ray," she said flatly, "thank you for coming." No good morning, no eye contact. "We've reviewed our leadership framework and made some decisions about the direction we need to take. Your style, while appreciated during a different era, no longer aligns with our strategy moving forward." She paused, as if to see whether I would interrupt. I didn't. "We're modernizing operations," she continued, "shifting toward more agile, tech-driven workflows and streamlining legacy structures that no longer serve the organization. As such, your position is being dissolved, effective immediately." Colin slid a folder across the table. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Savannah kept speaking. "There's a standard separation package inside. Legal has reviewed it. We're hoping this can be an amicable transition." Amicable. After 16 years, after building half the systems this company still runs on, they were hoping I'd just nod and fade away. I looked at Savannah. She was young, hungry, confident, but also careless, arrogant in the way only people with inherited power can be. She thought this was a clean break, a pivot. "Understood," I said simply, and stood. No arguments, no appeals. I didn't even touch the folder, just walked out. I returned to my office, closed the door, and stood in silence for a few seconds. Then I pulled out a single box and began packing. I didn't take much, just a framed photo of Elena, a coin from my last tour in Afghanistan, and a hand-carved nameplate one of my former team members had made for me. I left the rest: awards, binders, personal effects. The silence outside my office was deafening. Word had spread, but no one came in. No one said goodbye. The younger staff passed by with eyes averted. A few looked like they wanted to speak, but didn't. I didn't blame them. Speaking up in environments like this comes with consequences. I'd trained many of them, taught them how to build response protocols, how to run real-time logistics simulations, how to prioritize integrity over convenience. I saw in their silence not cowardice, but fear. The same fear that creeps into organizations when leadership starts valuing control more than culture. On my way out, I stopped by the operations floor. The hum of the machines, the glow of the monitors, it all continued like any other day. Except it wasn't. I stood at the threshold for a few seconds, letting the weight of it all settle in. Then I turned and walked to the parking lot. As I placed the box in the passenger seat of my truck, a strange calm came over me. I wasn't angry. Not yet. There was no yelling, no dramatic exit. Just a growing awareness that something was deeply wrong. Not just with the way I'd been treated, but with what this company was becoming. This wasn't modernization. This was erasure. Back home, I laid the unopened folder on the kitchen counter. I didn't touch it for hours. Instead, I poured a cup of black coffee, sat at the table, and stared out at the backyard. The grass needed cutting. The porch light was flickering. Normal problems. Grounding problems. But beneath them, a slow burn had started. I finally opened the folder that evening. It was exactly what I expected. Standard language, a few months of severance, a non-disparagement clause, clean and efficient. But they hadn't read my original contract. Not the version signed with Richard Beck nearly 2 decades ago. That version included a clause few people knew existed, Section 11, Paragraph C. In recognition of prior military service and critical role in corporate infrastructure, employees shall be entitled to full compensation equivalent to 24 months' salary, if terminated without documented cause. It had been inserted by Richard himself. "You've earned more than loyalty," he'd told me after my 3rd year. "You've earned protection." No one had brought it up during the meeting. No one had referenced it at all, and so, as Savannah celebrated her clean sweep and new vision, she didn't realize she had just triggered the exact clause designed to prevent this very situation. Not just a severance clause, but a legal safeguard, a time bomb with her name on it. She thought she had buried the past, but the foundation she was standing on, I had built it, and it was starting to crack. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was angry, though I was, but because my mind was already running logistics. Not military logistics this time, but legal ones, strategic ones, the kind you plan quietly, with precision. When I woke up, I brewed coffee, pulled out a yellow legal pad, and wrote one word at the top: options. Then I called Anna Ruiz. Anna and I go way back. We served together in Kandahar. She was a JAG officer, sharp as a scalpel and built for the courtroom. After retiring, she became an employment lawyer with a reputation for cutting through corporate nonsense like it was paper. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year, but when she answered on the second ring and I told her what happened, she didn't ask if I had the paperwork. She asked how quickly I could get it to her. By noon, I had scanned my original contract, including the paragraph Savannah's legal team had either missed or dismissed. Section 11, Paragraph C. "This is airtight," Anna said after a quick review. "They either pay the full 2 years or we take them to court and they pay that plus my fees." Her voice was calm, but deliberate, like mine used to be during operations briefings. I liked that about her. She didn't do drama, she did outcomes. But this wasn't just about the money. Not to me. Not really. Savannah Beck had made a choice, not just to remove me, but to remove us. I'd learned through a few quiet phone calls that I wasn't the only one terminated that week. Marcus Lee, a Navy vet who managed logistics compliance, was gone. Cheryl Denton, head of physical plant operations, also gone. Javier Ortiz, cybersecurity, lead, gone too. All over 50, all veterans, all replaced by newer hires with cheaper salaries and slick resumes. It wasn't a reorganization, it was a purge, and they were sloppy. I called Marcus first. We hadn't talked much outside of work, but there was always mutual respect. He picked up on the second ring. "Ray," he said, "they got you too?" I didn't answer right away. I just said, "Check your contract. If you've got anything in writing from when Richard hired you, call Anna Ruiz." He didn't ask, why. He just said, "Got it." One by one, I reached out to the others. Most were still in shock. A few were angry. But all of them were unsure of what came next. That's the thing about quiet professionals. We're trained to endure, not react. We don't go looking for fights, but we also don't back down when one finds us. That evening, I sat at the dining table Elena and I bought 20 years ago, her favorite ceramic bowl still at the center, filled with nothing but silence. I thought about everything we had built, everything I had poured into a company that now saw me as obsolete. But what Savannah didn't understand is that men like me don't just walk away. We document. We prepare. We wait. I went to my home office, opened my secure drive, and began sorting files, emails, system drafts, compliance records, internal memos. I wasn't looking to burn the place down. I was building a map of how we got here, of what was sacrificed for efficiency, of what could be proven without a shadow of a doubt. By midnight, I had a file marked Action Plan, and just beneath it, another one I called Legacy. Not my legacy. Hers. Because this wasn't going to end with a severance check. It was going to end with the truth. Quietly, methodically, and absolutely. The next week moved like a chess match, slow on the surface, but deliberate in every move. I didn't go public, I didn't rant online or leak anything to the press, that's not my way. What I did was simpler, smarter. I built a network, quietly, patiently, strategically, like I had done in the field. I knew how to build something, invisible until it was undeniable. The first step was organizing. I created a secure digital folder and gave access to only 4 people: Anna, Marcus, Cheryl, and Javier. I called it Phoenix. Not because we wanted to rise from the ashes, but because we intended to make it clear who started the fire. We each uploaded every contract, every termination notice, every email and memo that hinted at age bias, veteran targeting, or modernization plans that disproportionately impacted experienced staff. Then came the leak, not to the press, but to the right person. My daughter Lisa had a friend from the academy, now working with a veterans nonprofit focused on employment discrimination. Not exactly high profile, but they had ties to a few congressional aides who cared about what happened when companies quietly dismantled the people who had once protected this country. We didn't want headlines, not yet. What we needed was pressure in the places that mattered. It didn't take long. Within a few days, a polite but firm inquiry came from the Department of Labor. An early-stage audit, disguised as a routine veteran, hiring compliance check. Savannah probably thought it was random. She didn't know it had been triggered by someone 3 degrees removed from me. That's the advantage of playing the long game. Most people don't even realize they're on the board until the king is already cornered. While the audit quietly unfolded, I made another call. This one to Noah Carlson, a former Marine ID, served with in Mosul. After leaving the service, he'd built a private security consulting firm called Ironwall Strategies, and we'd kept in loose touch over the years. I'd helped him with some operational planning a while back, nothing formal. But when I told him I might be available full-time, his voice lit up. "Ray, are you serious?" he asked. "I've wanted to bring you on for years." We set up a lunch meeting at a quiet spot just outside Arlington. I laid everything out. My exit from Beck, the contract clause, the audit, the group of veterans now caught in the same storm. He listened, didn't interrupt once. Then he leaned back, nodded, and said, "You want in? I'll make you VP of Risk and Compliance, full salary, equity stake, and you build your own team." It wasn't about revenge, it was about value, about working for a company that understood what experience meant, that didn't treat gray hair like a liability. I accepted his offer the next day, but I wasn't done. I spent the next week reaching out to more people from Beck, quiet conversations, off the record, mostly with those still inside. Some were scared, others frustrated. One of them, Dev Patel, had been my go-to for systems implementation. He was in his mid-30s, not a vet, but sharp and principled. When I asked how things were going under Savannah, his voice lowered. "She's been cutting corners, Ray. Critical corners. We're outsourcing encryption code to a foreign partner in Eastern Europe. No compliance clearance." That stopped me cold. "Does the board know?" "No," he said. "She told us to skip the usual review. Said we'd fix it later, but I saved everything. I don't feel right about it." He sent me the documents within the hour. Code outsourcing, emails bypassing security checks, signed authorizations without any record of compliance audit. This wasn't just a moral failure, it was a national security risk. I forwarded everything to Anna. She took one look and said, "This alone could trigger a federal investigation. It's not just wrongful termination anymore. It's criminal. Exposure." We now had 2 fronts, one legal, one ethical, both anchored in proof. But what made the next part possible wasn't just the paper trail, it was the people. Quiet, competent, overlooked people who had been discarded because someone wanted a flashier presentation for the board. I called a meeting with Marcus, Cheryl, and Javier. Told them about Ironwall. Told them we had a chance not just to sue, but to build. Build something better. A new division within Ironwall focused on logistics and infrastructure, what we did best. Everyone would have a role. Everyone would get ownership. They didn't hesitate. That weekend, we met at my house. It felt like a field briefing, notes on the table, laptops open, coffee mugs going cold. We built the blueprint for a full division. Cheryl would oversee operational systems. Javier would lead cyber defense. Marcus would handle federal compliance and government contract bids. I would lead the division, shape the culture, and mentor the next generation. We called it Iron Core, a nod to who we were and how we worked. No fluff, just strength, built quietly, tested under pressure, and never underestimated again. By the end of the week, we had NDAs signed, preliminary funding secured, and our first draft proposal for a federal contract in place. I didn't raise my voice once, but Savannah was about to hear us loud and clear. 3 weeks after I was fired, I walked into the same glass-paneled conference room where Savannah Beck had dismissed me with corporate buzzwords and a condescending smile. This time she wasn't smiling. She sat at the head of the table again, flanked by the company's legal counsel, a young, overconfident associate named Ethan Grant, and 2 board members who tried and failed to look neutral. Across from them sat Anna Ruiz, crisp in a charcoal blazer, a legal pad in front of her but untouched. She didn't need to take notes. She already knew how this would play out. I took my seat beside her and set a thin folder on the table. Savannah eyed it, then looked at me. "I'm surprised you wanted to handle this in person," she said, her voice cool and clipped. "Most of these matters are handled by email or through counsel." I nodded slowly. "Some things deserve eye contact." Ethan cleared his throat, leaned forward. "Mr. Delgado, we'd like to offer a revised severance, 6 months compensation, and full health care coverage for that period, in exchange for a signed agreement to waive any further claims." Anna didn't even blink. She slid the folder across the table and opened it to the highlighted section of my contract. Section 11, Paragraph C. Termination without documented cause, defined clearly in Appendix B, triggers a severance, equal to 24 months' salary, paid in full within 60 days. Ethan glanced at it, smiled nervously. "We understand the clause, but misalignment with leadership vision qualifies as performance-related cause under Virginia law. We believe our offer is more than generous given the circumstances." Anna looked at him like he was a child who'd wandered into a graduate seminar. "Unless you have written documentation of performance issues, including formal warnings, improvement plans, or internal assessments tied to raise removal, you have no case. Misalignment isn't cause. It's code for age discrimination and leadership insecurity." Savannah stiffened. "We're trying to modernize this company. The old guard was holding us back. We needed fresh energy, new ideas. And apparently," I said quietly, "no oversight." Her jaw tightened. "Excuse me?" I leaned forward. "You outsourced encryption code to a foreign vendor without clearance. You bypassed compliance protocols. You endangered every contract Beck Defense holds with the federal government. And you did it with a paper trail." The room went still. Ethan looked up, alarmed. "That's not part of this discussion." "It is now," Anna said. "Because your client's carelessness isn't just a civil liability. It's a national security concern. We've submitted the documentation to the Department of Defense, who have opened a preliminary inquiry." Savannah's eyes darted to the board members, who now looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. "This is outrageous," she said. "This is just retaliation." "No," I said, my voice steady. "Retaliation is personal. This is professional accountability." At that moment, the door opened and in rolled Richard Beck in a wheelchair, looking thinner than the last time I saw him but sharper than ever. A nurse stood behind him, but his hands were steady as he removed his glasses and surveyed the room. "I asked to speak with the board before this meeting," he said. "They asked me to stay for this." Savannah turned red. "Dad, this doesn't concern—" "It concerns me entirely," he said, cutting her off. "This company bears my name, and you've treated it like a tech startup instead of a national defense contractor." He turned toward me. "Ray, I should have stepped in sooner. I trusted that she would listen. She didn't. That's my failure. But I'd like to make it right. Savannah stood up. You're not on the board anymore. Richard didn't flinch. No, but I still own controlling interest, 51%. You never read the trust documents, did you? The board chair cleared his throat. Mr. Beck has called for a vote to reinstate operational oversight until a full review of executive leadership can be conducted. That vote passed 3-1 this morning. Savannah's mouth opened, but no words came out. Ethan whispered something to her, likely about legal exposure. Her hands balled into fists at her sides. Ray, Richard said, we'd like you to return as interim chief operating officer while we evaluate next steps, and we'll honor every clause in your original contract retroactively. I looked at Anna, who gave me the slightest nod. Then I turned to Richard. I'll return, I said, but not to patch holes in a sinking ship. I'll return to clean house. Savannah turned to me, fury written across her face. You think this is over? Anyone who hires you, partners with you, they'll lose us. We'll blacklist them. I'll make sure of it. I stood slowly. You've already done that, Savannah. You made Beck Defense radioactive. I'm just the one holding up the Geiger counter. She stormed out, Ethan scrambling after her. The room sat in silence for a moment. Then Richard looked at me and said, softly, I forgot what integrity felt like around here. Thank you for reminding me. I didn't respond right away. I just gathered my folder, shook hands with the board chair, and walked out. Not as a victim, not even as a victor, but as a man who'd waited long enough to be heard. And finally, he was. 6 months later, I stood on the raised platform of Ironwall Strategies' new logistics facility just outside Quantico. The late morning sun caught the rows of freshly installed equipment below. Custom fabrication tables, encrypted comm stations, and an entire wing dedicated to secure supply chain modeling. I hadn't planned to come back to leadership this way. I certainly hadn't planned on starting over. But in some strange way, it felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The transition had been fast but focused. After Savannah's removal, the board launched a full audit of Beck Defense's leadership practices, vendor deals, and security protocols. What they found didn't surprise me. Corners cut, contracts rushed, sensitive data improperly handled, all in the name of efficiency. Richard Beck, to his credit, didn't dodge responsibility. He stepped down permanently, but not before restoring every severance and benefit owed to the employees Savannah had forced out. He also transferred a portion of his shares into a veteran employee trust, ensuring that the people who built the company could still have a stake in it. I declined the offer to return as full-time COO. I'd done that job already. It wasn't mine to save anymore. Instead, I turned my focus to Iron Core, the new division within Ironwall that Marcus, Cheryl, Javier, and I had built from the ground up. We weren't interested in competing with giant corporations. We were focused on doing one thing well: high integrity, small batch logistics, and defense compliance for federal and nonprofit contracts. The kind of work where reputation still mattered, where trust wasn't just a line in a mission statement. The best part? People followed. Not because of a title, but because of how we'd led. Dev joined our cybersecurity team a few weeks after the Beck fallout. So did half a dozen other former employees who wanted something better, something grounded in respect. Even some clients from Beck Defense, disillusioned by the scandal, reached out. We didn't poach. We didn't chase. We built. Quietly, steadily, the way we always had. One afternoon, while reviewing project timelines with Cheryl, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened. It was Savannah. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. She said she was in Miami now, working on a personal rebranding project. Said she was rethinking leadership. She didn't apologize, not really, but she did ask a question. Would you ever consider a conversation? I deleted the message, not out of anger, but because there was nothing left to talk about. People like Savannah see leadership as entitlement. People like us see it as service, and that difference is everything. Now every morning when I walk through our new facility, I see people who trust one another, who show up for more than just a paycheck. I see experience honored, not discarded, I see Elena's words in everything. We've built, document everything, protect your integrity, and when the time comes, stand your ground. We didn't just survive. We built something better. And we did it our way. In corporate America, there's a dangerous assumption that age equals obsolescence and that veterans, people trained in discipline, responsibility, and crisis management, can't adapt to modern business. But what this story reminds us is simple. Principles never go out of style. Loyalty, preparation, humility, and strength under pressure, these aren't just military traits. They're leadership traits. They're the foundation of any institution that lasts. This wasn't just a story about Ray Delgado. It was a story about what happens when experience is undervalued and when those who build are pushed aside by those who only perform. But when the dust settles, it's not noise that endures. It's structure. It's consistency. It's people who know how to lead when no one's watching. One viewer once commented under a similar story, "We don't need more disruptors. We need more rebuilders." I couldn't agree more. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been overlooked, dismissed, or underestimated, take a moment to share your experience in the comments. These stories matter more than we think, and yours could be the one someone else needs to hear today. And if you believe dignity still belongs in leadership, don't forget to subscribe. We're just getting started.